All right, seems to be that time. Here we go. So once again, welcome everybody. I'm Eric Einhorn. I'm the General Artistic Director of Onsite Opera, and I am joined today by Onsite's Music Director, Geoffrey McDonald, who is in Aachen, Germany right now, hence it being very dark outside, and composer Juliana Hall, who is the composer of the Anne Frank song cycle that you have all been enjoying. And here's a little bit more about Juliana. So, hailed as one of our country's most able and prolific art song composers, American art song composer Juliana Hall has written some 60 song cycles and vocal chamber works. And more than 500 performers, singers, and pianists have performed her music across the US and in dozens of countries on 6 continents. Her compositions are featured regularly at some of the world's most prestigious concert venues, including the 92nd Street Y, Ambassador Auditorium, Herbst Theater, Library of Congress, Weill Recital Hall at Carnegie Hall, and Wigmore Hall. Her songs have been broadcast over the BBC and NPR radio networks, as well as numerous classical music stations worldwide. And her songs are published by E.C. Shermer and Boozy and Hawkes and New Music Shelf. And we are so honored to have Juliana with us today. Welcome, Juliana.
Thank you, Eric.
So I'm especially excited about this conversation because, and I know, I believe many of our audience members can maybe relate to this. We are great consumers of music. We are great lovers of classical music. And it's not very often we get the opportunity to talk directly to the source. Often we're enjoying music by people who are very much dead and very much, even if they were alive, would be in a different country. And so to have this very rare opportunity to enjoy your music and then to be able to hear about it directly from you, your process as it relates to you as a composer and this particular cycle, I am particularly excited. And so for all of you today, what are those burning questions you've always wanted to ask Mozart or Verdi, or Bernstein? So now is the time. Get those questions coming in the chat. So let's Juliana, let's start at the beginning, and I wonder if you'll take us through the process of well, before we go there. So you're a composer, and how'd you get there? Have you always wanted to be a composer? What brought you to your current role?
I think I'm as surprised as anybody that I'm a composer. I mean, who would have known? You know, I came from a little town. I didn't even know that you could make a living as a composer or work or have your life's work as a composer. It's totally, I still think, wow, how did I get here? What brought me here? So I'm a little bit, but I can tell you that I'm thankful to be here. And how it happened was I was a pianist since I was little. My mom wanted me to play the piano, and she taught me how to play the piano, and I was pretty good, but it didn't feel like quite the right place for me. I went to CCM and kept working at it as hard as I could, because that's really the only thing I knew how to do, and the only thing that I could do pretty well. So, and then I went to New York and studied, and still felt like, wow, I still don't know what else I could do, but this doesn't feel right. You know, I feel like I need to find my place. I was nervous. I'm a very shy person. So walking on a stage and playing all this piano music and people thinking, wow, she's this or that, a nice pianist and all, I couldn't be there anymore. So I wanted to find in this life where I could belong. And so I went to Yale. I thought, well, there must be a lot of pretty smart people there. And I was right. I went there as a pianist, and I took composition lessons for fun, kind of, because I thought, well, I do love drama. I do love poetry. There is a connection that I feel when I see a good story or see a good play, there must be something. So I took some composition lessons, and from the very beginning, Fred Chesky, who was my first teacher, he said, "You're a composer." And I just thought, wow, I was writing and it felt so natural. I felt, and you can be by yourself. You don't have to be out on stage. You can just be with the poet. You can be with that text that is so beautiful and so moving and tells you so many wonderful experiences that we all feel. So I was started out by Fred saying, "You're a composer." And then not too long after that, Martin Bresnik came over. I was having a cola and some pizza and just kind of hanging out with all the friends and in grad school. And he said, "Why don't you think about studying composition? So why don't you flip?" So I did it quickly. Over the summer, he called my little town and he said, "We're working on getting you to the composition program. So is that okay?" I said, "Yes, let's do it." And ever since then, I just felt like I had found my place. It's a quiet place. There's nothing that goes on here. It's just me and a poet kind of working together to make a song. And, that feels about right for me. I think everybody has their place in life that feels like, wow, that's okay. Now I feel better. Sometimes it's easy to find, and sometimes it takes others to help you find it. And I'm glad for the people at Yale. I'm very thankful because they showed me what I needed to see.
That's fantastic. A testament to the value of great teachers in our lives. And I'm sure we can all identify with those people who, at those moments in our life, just took us by the hand or nudged us or suggested. That's wonderful. Now, you said that being a shy person, that now it's just you and the poet. And for many composers, the composers, I should say, that I've had the pleasure of speaking to or working with, there tends to be an area of expertise or an area of focus compositionally that a composer gravitates to. There might be some other genres sprinkled in, but you have clearly gravitated towards art song, and sort of in this wonderful tradition in 19th century European structure and form. How did you find your way to art song, and how has it continued to nourish you and sort of keep you on the track that you're on?
I found my way to art song. That was, I think, because I had a sense that I love drama. I didn't really know it totally, but reading poems and reading text, I felt there was some connection with me and sound. And I knew that was a good place. I could work there and I could live with those poets. And then I was very fortunate to, at Yale again, the faculty is wonderful. So are the students. I became friends with this beautiful soprano, Karen Burlingame, and she loved doing premieres just out of the blue, and we started doing song after song after song for 2 years. And it gave me the feeling of getting to know these poets deeper and deeper, and a love for the drama and the stories that they were telling, and the images, even the images of nothing very dramatic, but very beautiful. You could just sit and think of a little spider or a little cricket and find yourself in another world. And I love doing that because life is full of that. And so I think with Karen and that same thing, I think it happens to many people many times. When you feel like you're on the right path, things kind of start falling into place. Like Karen said, I want to do premieres, let's do them together. And everybody was so supportive and encouraging. And I knew I loved poetry, and you know, it just fell into place after that initial beginning. And so I fell in love with the poetry and the drama and the stories. And I decided not to go any, you know, not to turn back. I thought I was in the right place. So that's how it worked out.
Excellent.
I actually have a couple of quick questions. I don't want to keep you stuck too far in the past. I know we want to move through the entirety of your artistic progress, but I do have a couple of questions. One of which I will accept and I don't know for an answer for sure, but what is it that you thought that your first teacher saw or heard? What was it that made him say, you're a composer? Pardon me for my phone ringing.
That is a good question. And I really don't know what he saw, except that it was a funny thing, because I felt like my peers, my colleagues were saying the same thing. They were saying, just write from the heart. Just don't be afraid, you know, just be with the music. And I think it was just maybe I was a pianist and I was improvising, and Fred was saying, he was a pianist, you know, and he wrote a lot of piano music. He was saying, just tell the story in the sound. And for some reason, for some reason that I still don't know, I have this sense of, you know, just being an intuitive composer, I can do that. I can get a sense and feel of the sound and matching the text, or even just telling a story. So it must have been something like that, but who knows? It's composing is very strange, you know, and I don't know if anybody knows, you know, how or why, or.
But somebody saw that it was in you for sure, or multiple people. My second question is related to those early experiences, and it has to do with learning in what sounds like the space of a couple of years to write for, first of all, the voice generally, but it also sounds like you had a specific partnership with a single singer. So I wonder if there were some interesting things that you learned through that process about both of those things, the voice generally and about writing for a single person and that kind of thing, if you could speak to that.
I think that Karen showed me a lot of things that worked and some that didn't. And I think for one thing, my music is difficult, and she showed me how helpful it is to help the singer, because the singer's out there by themselves, you know, trying to, my music is tonal, but it goes through various tonalities sometimes without landing, and because we're expressing text or thinking about the words. And so she was very good about giving me a sense of what would be possible for a singer to not feel uncomfortable, you know, because I want them to feel good. And also, I think we did this by not talking about it so much as doing it over and over. Like she would sing and I would find her range, you know, that sounded like different things, or where it needed to be a little bit lower, where the text needed to be a little bit more spoken kind of thing. I think it just from doing it over and over. And I found that being a composer, the more you work, the more you learn. You know, you just learn by getting better and shining it and polishing. And I think that's what she did for me. And, you know, it was a funny thing because for a long time, I felt like I know soprano so well, and I don't really know like tenor. I was kind of guessing. Yeah, it's like, oh my gosh.
I don't think anyone does.
Pardon?
I don't think anyone does.
Oh yeah.
Conceptual tenors.
Yeah, but it made a difference because I felt so close to soprano. And a little bit longer after that, I found I had a baritone friend, Richard Lawley, and another baritone. He was from Yale, and he still is at Yale, and a gorgeous, gorgeous sound. But again, he showed me by working together. It was really neat because I was a pianist and I worked with these singers. So I got to hear a lot and listen and, you know, kind of work through things as we were working together, you know, what felt good. And, you know, he would say, this F sharp's awfully high. Could I do it as a falsetto? And it would be so beautiful. And I'd have no idea that you could do that. You know, he would tell me things, show me. So, you know, I think just working with singers and especially with Karen for those 2 years, just doing it.
Great.
That's excellent. I wonder now if you'll pull back the curtain a little bit, because, you know, as I said in the beginning, we are all avid consumers of the end product of your process, and it's great to hear how that process began for you from transitioning from pianist to composer. But the meat of what it is that you do, of what does it mean to be a composer? What is that process like? I'm wondering if you could take us through that, from talking about what kind of poetry you're attracted to, sort of what you look like, what you look at in that selection process, and then once you've identified that golden nugget of poetry, what's your next step? What is that process like?
I find texts from different sources. These days I've been using public domain. I mean, just almost all the time, because I don't feel like I want to wait for somebody to say it's okay. I mean, it could be years, and once I see a text, I want to know that it's for me. I can have it. I can start living with it. So, you know, there are different ways of finding text. Sometimes performers have their own ideas, and like the saxophonist, she sent me Wallace Stevens' text, and it was so wonderful, and I didn't think of him. You know, it just was a little bit unusual text, and a little bit like I would look at it and think it's very musical, but what would I do with it? But it was neat because it gave me another story or another color that I didn't know I would be able to get close to, and I did. So sometimes there are surprises like that. And then sometimes what I always look for is a good story and a message that needs to be communicated or should be told. And then sometimes it's human experiences, like what we all think about, like death and love and time, and those kinds of texts I'm very, very wanting to kind of connect with, so I can share the poet's words, because they usually have such profound insight into those kinds of subjects. So, you know, finding a text, it can come from very different sources. There was one, I wanted to write a piece for Brian Osawa. You know, he's just such he was an amazing countertenor. So I thought Shakespeare, you know, Shakespeare countertenor, same kind of time period. So that kind of brought that text into mind. You know, there are just a lot of things that you think about. One thing, I think it has to be lyrical, musical, and sometimes there are things that are a little bit too edgy for me. I like a little bit of a softer, I don't know, just something where I can know that the singer can sing it very beautifully. You know, it just has a very musical sense to it. So, you know, diaries, letters, monodramas are awfully fun. You know, just I like variety, because I do write a lot of songs. And so I have to kind of keep moving from one thing to another with as much, just something different colors as I can.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting what you say about about that because so often I think one can think about art song composing a bit more in the French or Germanic tradition, which sometimes are dramatic or more dramatic, have some sort of dramatic thread through them, but more often than not, a bit more of isolated poetry of just sort of in the purest sense. But what it sounds like, and I think what brought us to this crossroads of your work and on-site opera is the inherent drama in the way in everything that you approach, and even in the Anne Frank cycle, there isn't a dramatic through line per se. It's not that we have a dramatic arc as we would in a play or in an opera, but the way you set them, the order you set them in, the knowing what the context is, certainly drives that drama. So, and it is something that I've seen in your work over and over again, even though they are song cycles or monodramas, that they are always have a foundation of narrative and drama. And that's incredibly exciting as a producer. And I'm sure many people on this call would agree as listeners as well. So what drew you to Anne Frank in the model, which I completely relate to, of public domain is easier, better, faster. You don't have to deal with the estate. You don't have to deal with the person. You have to deal with rejection. What about Anne Frank, which is very much not in the public domain? What drew you to her, to the diary?
Her story, her message.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Anne really is a story that we all need to hear over and over. I think she, for all of us at all times, you know, she tells us to have hope and to have courage and to be kind, you know, to each of us, to everyone, or this, you know, her message of being person that sees good, you know, that's what I want. That I thought was so beautiful. And I thought it was something that we'll never get tired of hearing, and we can always listen and hear those words. And I've read, you know, I knew her story from way back. And so, you know, it had been kind of something I've been thinking about for quite a while. I did have to ask for permission, like you said, but I had a feeling that they also wanted their words to be heard too. So I was hoping I was right, but I was, and they were very, very good. The only thing they said was, you can't call it the Diary of Anne Frank, you have to have another name. So that's why we came up with A World Turned Upside Down. But it was Anne's story totally that brought me to her world. And I'm thankful to be a composer that has had a chance to help her words become songs, because I think music and text, that's a very powerful combination. And if we can get them, you know, let them speak together as much as we can, you know, I'm thankful to be able to do it, to be one of those composers.
Absolutely. All right, so you've gotten permission to set her words. Now what? What's the next step for you?
I looked at the diary and read it over and over and over. And like I said, I sort of knew it, but I had to make a story. Like you said, what's it like, 330 pages. So I have to make a libretto. I have to make something that has enough text that goes from here to there with an arc inside. A good beginning, a good ending, and what happens inside. So I looked at her diary. I thought, let's start at the beginning where she's just receiving her diary as a birthday present. And the neat thing about this is that she not only thinks that that's her nicest present. But she says, you're going to be my friend, and I'm going to call you Kitty. You know, this is more than just a diary, and writing, you see, is how important it is to her. So we started with the diary being just about the most important thing of the whole piece, because it's she and Anne, or Anne and the diary being together, and Anne writing down all of her thoughts. And then what I wanted to do, and you know what I do, I forgot to tell you, I have all these, after I made the libretto, I put them out on a piece of paper, on a table, and say, oh, that looks like that would be a nice second. And oh, I could see this happening for third and fourth and fifth, all the way. So I could kind of see the story. Also, I think that's important to kind of get a sense of from here to there. So after I had that nice beginning, I thought, what's going to happen? The world, suddenly the world is turned, her world is turned upside down. So I wanted to show that that was quick, that was dramatic. I went very suddenly. I thought suddenly in her words was very important, because she jumps from this beautiful, innocent girl just opening her diary to being having a call from the secret police, you know, that they have to go into hiding the next day. So I thought, okay, that's second. And then I wanted to tell a little bit more about what it was like, you know, how they got their food, and then and what they had to eat, which was not much. They depended on friends. And then the terror of footsteps, you know, what it was like being in that attic and being, you know, hearing noises and in the dark, and the frightening part of it. And then also how she has hope through all this really, really dramatic, terrible experience that she's having now. She's there. I don't know where this footsteps has, maybe it's a year in, you know, where she's been they were in the hiding for a couple of years. But so I wanted to continue with now for her saying, God is taking care of them. He's watching over us. We've been okay, you know, so far. And then I thought, wow, you know, it is the neatest thing that she's still thinking about good things and hope and what she wants to do after the war. And she wants to be a writer. She has ambition. She's just a girl. And she knows she has talent. She wants to write something great if she can, and something that everybody will remember and know about, and it will be meaningful to them. It will have real substance. And so she really knew that she was a talented writer, and she still had the dreams, her dreams of going out and going back to school and working. And so that's, I thought would be, I just wanted to give a break from the heaviness to go back to, she's still a little girl, or a young girl, you know, she still has thoughts of hope and wants this to be over so she can continue her life. And then we return to darkness and we see that it doesn't work out. You know, the cloud is getting closer and closer. The rings are getting tighter and tighter. And all she can do is scream and cry and say, let us out, let us out. And then the piano. So it does tell a story, and I do have it laid out to where I can kind of see the story unfolding. And it's just very important to tell this different aspects. That's what I was thinking when I wrote the libretto, or I thought about the poems themselves.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it's that intentionality and that thought about the dramatic arc was certainly that when Jeff and I first were introduced to the cycle, that was definitely something that resonated. It was this very clear, unlike so many song cycles that are out there, which are even if they're based on primary material of a diary or letters, even the Diary of Virginia Woolf doesn't, it sort of by nature, it doesn't tell the same kind of story. You can place the songs that Argento wrote in the arc of Virginia Woolf's life,
Right.
For what you may or may not know about it, but this Anne Frank story is certainly one that many of us know. It's part of most school curriculums. It is required reading on many levels, and so then to find this arc, and even the dramatic choices you made in constructing this arc informed the experience that we all had with it. With the very first song, talking about the diary as a gift, and it was the springboard for the design of that particular booklet for us, because it allowed us to really dive into what the diary looked like, what that specific volume was, because she wrote in a few different volumes, and to go back to the very first one that she received on her birthday, and to contextualize it as we did, with giving a little birthday card, and to be able to dive in that way was a real resource for us, for sure. So we, which is sort of the living process of all of this, is that you as a composer find these texts, and then it goes into the hands of the producers to say, okay, what are our clues, what are our hints, what is the composer and or the librettist telling us about this material, and how are they doing it, and what can we grab onto to help make it more engaging and vital to the audience. So it's this constant collaboration, even though sometimes the composer and librettist aren't alive, but if they are, what are those resources that we can pull from to make it as vivid? For ultimately, it's for the audience. We do all of this for the audience. It's certainly not in a vacuum. Even if there are those of us who would much prefer to be in our studios and not have to go out on stage. Ultimately, what we are doing is creating something to get wound up eventually to an audience. So it's always fun to sort of think about that assembly line, for lack of a better way of thinking about it. All right, so you've now gotten the permission for the text. You've ordered it in a way that resonates with you and creates a dramatic structure. But there's still not a lick of music written. So
You're right.
so then what?
So then what can you do, right?
Right.
So then I go from tip top, the very beginning, to the very end of the whole cycle. But I did in little sections. So in this case, I had my little birthday song. Well, this is Walt Whitman, but so say this was Anne Frank. I'd put it up here, tape it on the piano, have this nice blank sheet, many pencils up here. I sharpen them, I'm ready to go. So I thought about her work. I thought about this poem, this very, very first little segment that I'm about to partake in, and my little adventure. And I think, okay, Anne, it's me and you. And it's really not a very comfy place to be, because this is where I count on Anne to tell me, to say, okay, this is where we're going, Anne, and I'm going to listen to you. And so I think about her words. I've read them a million times. I think, think about right now. I'm thinking about her as she is. She's young. She's 13. She's happy. So I start thinking, what would that be like? And of course, it's her birthday, and birthday tune just popped in my head. The happy birthday. So that little tune became the idea from beginning to end. You'll hear that little motif all the way through. It came because I remember how excited those birthdays could be when you're young. You know, you wake up early and you run down, and that's such a chipper little song. So I thought, well, there's nothing better that I can think of. So so I just start playing and trying to figure out how to make it work, how to make Anne sing, how to tell this little story about her diary, how she's going to feel like, oh, I'm so excited, I'm going to get this, I'm going to go down and go to get her presents. And, you know, then I start thinking how she's going to feel when she gets her diary. You know, then she leads me into the song. Let's see, in the first one, what was I thinking about? Happy birthday. Yeah, you know, I was going to tell you, since I was a pianist for so long, I can improvise pretty easily. So, you know, I'm thinking about something that is happy, something that is, you know, nothing long, but kind of articulated, whatever, you know, just kind of short articulation. So I just pull around until I can find, and then something feels like, oh, that kind of says it. That's it. And then I have to trust that. And I could be totally wrong, but for some reason, I think it's that little mystery or that little magic that no composer really understands totally. But we say that's it, and we start scribbling as quickly as we can. So I get this little birthday tune all the way through, just sketched with pencil and paper. Now, I don't know, I don't remember if, yes, it was. I was going to say, there was a time when I didn't know how to use a computer and do the computer software and make it a pretty, you know, readable kind of next step. But now I can, and I know I did that with Anne. After all these scribbles and getting it from the beginning to the end, I put it in Sibelius, and that kind of shows me a little bit more about clearness. Do you really want that note? Is it really said that way? Is that really how she's saying that? Think about it. You know, it's like another, a little bit deeper way of looking at it. I've got the sketch to work with, but then now I've got something I can see that's already there. And actually, that's my favorite part. The first part is very difficult because I'm shaking, you know, like, oh gosh, and show me what to do. But now I've got it down, so I can then start to work and start thinking, how do you want to say this? Do you need time here? Timing is really important. Do you need that little bit of space to think in this little section, you know? And that Sibelius, some singer told me once that Sibelius was going to be my best friend. And I thought, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding, because I can't do it. I can't even, you know, hardly type. But she was right, because now I see it clearly. It gives me a chance to do that polishing. You know, with manuscript, it's still a little dusty. You know, you still can't quite see everything. But this is so clean and so beautifully set that I can tell what's going on. And then after I go through that second stage, after it's in Sibelius, I do it again and start putting in dynamics and editing and tempos and all of the things that make the music, you know, the expression. And that is so important, because once again, if you see that and you see that a line isn't going to a certain place like it needs to, you can adjust it. So it's all like another third layer of revision in it within that self. So, and then after that, I mean, this one little song, you know, goes through this and that, many phases. After that, I send it down to my husband. He's a real good at computers, which has really been fun because we've been working together, and he lays it out and makes it look really beautiful, you know, like a really published score. Then I look at it again and I say, proofread it. So there's then that layer, and then we send it to Shermer, and they do it again, and then it comes back to me, and I do it again. So you know, the song goes through many stages, but it starts out with nothing and goes to this beautiful kind of a published score if I'm on the right track, and if things go the way they hopefully would.
Juliana, I have a question about that. So it sounds like you have this stage process, which sounds to me it makes a lot of sense. What I'm curious about, trying to imagine what it's like for you at that very first stage, where you've done your reading again and again, as you say, and then you're staring in front of a blank page. I guess my question is there music that has, in the reading process alone, that has been working its way, if not necessarily, say, the birthday tune as a front of mind matter for that one song, the overall, you know, kind of gestalt, is there music that's crept in from that world? Do you try to suppress that and go fresh? What's that kind of process like?
It's a funny thing, because you hear about that a lot, where composers hear things in their mind and they can write it down even on a, you know, in the restaurant or something. I don't do that. I've never heard anything in my mind. All I've heard are words, images, ideas of her text going through my mind. You know, like, what's she feeling? What's she thinking? How can this be set? And it's a funny thing. I think it's in my fingers where that happens, where the music is.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's, you know, I guess all composers have so many different things, but all of a sudden, you know, I know it's time. It's there. It's like a little bit of, it's just that intuition, that little voice that says, okay, let's just, you know, here we are. It's time to start to work. And it seems to be there when I need it.
Right.
Yeah, so.
That's so interesting. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So it's interesting what you talk about, that it's in your fingers, which is fascinating, which it's, you know, you hear the mythology of Mozart, for example, where, you know, he would produce these, you know, note perfect manuscripts, these autographs that came directly from his head, and all of that, which us mere mortals here in any industry, and we just get angry at people like that, because most of us, of course, you know, especially the creative process is about idea revision, throwing it out, trying again, failing a bunch of times, and then finally maybe one time having a halfway decent idea. And so on a micro level, when setting any bit of text, are there times, and maybe if you can give an example of multiple ways you set a text, how that, if there are different ideas you have for a certain stretch of poetry, what is that like? How ultimately do you make that decision about which way to go? And how might you set the same piece of poetry two different ways?
That does happen, and that usually happens in the second stage when I have the Sibelius, and I'm in that section of, what is she thinking? Could it be this way or could it be that way? And I can give you an example of that. Let's see. In this, oh yeah, you remember in Footsteps, we were talking about how theatrical that is and how dramatic that is. And I didn't play that for you this time, but let me show you. There's a lot of this kind of, where'd that go? There's a lot of this kind of speaking, like, my head's in a whirl. I really don't know where to begin. You know, where she's speaking it or saying, like, you know, that kind of a very talky kind of dramatic kind of text setting. But when I got to the end of that section, there was a time when they knew they were going to be okay. And Anne says, none of us have ever been in such danger as we were that night. God was truly watching over us. So when I said it the first time, and this is the time that I kept, and I did it because I thought it was important, because it showed Anne and her sense of gratitude of God was truly watching over us. She was saying, none of us had been in such danger. I let her sing that, as contrast to all that speaking and all the spooky sounds and stuff. So I'll play that for you. You got to have an imagination of a pretty soprano singing this, because it's a pretty little melody. But I let Anne sing it because I thought it would be the most expressive way to do it. And I did that because I think that was important to her, to know her sense that she was being taken care of. God was watching. So here we go. None of us have ever been in such danger as we were that night. God was truly watching over us. Now you see that has that little melody in it. If you could imagine a little bit beyond what you heard, you can see that I let the singer sing it because I thought that would be the most expressive way to do it. Now, what I could have done, which, I did think about a little bit, like they weren't able to speak because they were so frightened. They didn't want to make any sound. So I could have had Anne say that to herself, like, wow, like this. Let's see. None of us have ever been in such danger as we were that night. God was truly watching over us. More of a introverted, I'm still afraid to speak, but she still felt it. But since I thought the contrast was nice, and it was important to her, I went the other way.
That is certainly one of my favorite little musical moments, that build of where it from the listener, it feels like there is no other choice but to have that sailing line of God was truly watching over us. It just, even hearing it now, it does, for what it's worth, I think you made the right choice.
Oh.
So taking it another step further in your process, so you've gotten the rights, you've sat with the text for a while, you've ordered it, you've put pencil to paper, and you've improvised through it, and you've come up with your draft, and it's cooking along, and then a singer gets their hands on it. Mm-hmm. What is that like for you? The first time you hear it outside of your studio, outside of your own head and your fingers, what's that like?
It's like bringing something to life. I mean, because sitting on the page, and as you heard, I'm not a singer, and I can't make it sound like I would like. I would love to hear that beautiful line sung and expressed. And so I'm very, very grateful. I'm the most grateful person I could ever think of. but I am really thankful to have a singer that will take it and bring it to life, and to share her message, and to take care of it as they have. I can tell you that Christina and Howard just did the most beautiful, wonderful performance, and I felt it was so fun to hear Anne and her little laughing at the beginning, and then her anguish as things were not looking good, her darkness. And as you said, that mashed potato thing, I listened to it again. I said, oh yeah, I see how you thought about the mashed potatoes, like, oh, how could we you know, how could a teenager ever eat that again? Like, ah, can't stand it. But it's an amazing experience. And the thing with Anne is she sat for years, I mean, a couple years, I think, before I ever had a singer to sing it. It was a funny thing, you know, Facebook has been so neat in a funny way because I've gotten to know singers. Otherwise, I didn't have a connection with them. But somebody had asked for social justice songs, and I knew Anne was sitting back there and had been for a while. And I said, and I knew that it was almost at a place where I could give it to somebody, but not quite. I said, if you'll give me a couple more months, you know, I'll polish it up and get it ready for you. And she did. She took it and she did the premiere in Texas, I think. And you know, the wonderful thing about that is having a premiere and a recording, then other people can say, oh, I'd like to hear that. Or, you know, because still on the page, it's still tricky to get the sense of what it is until you've heard it, until it's become alive and sent itself into the world. You know, it sort of just feels like it's in a little, in my room a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wonderful. We just have a few minutes left, and I want to encourage anybody, if you have any questions for Juliana or for any of us, to put them in the chat. One thing that we neglected to talk about earlier, which I wanted to bring up in this idea of your compositional work as it's connected to the European tradition of art song, and sort of that collaborative process and your own process from pianist to educate through Yale to become a composer. That another interesting link you have to this greater project, this diary project that we've done, is that you were actually a student of Dominic Argento's, the composer of the Diary of Virginia Woolf. So what was that like? What was studying with him like? And my understanding, you maintained quite a friendship later in your lives as well.
It was wonderful. It was, again, you know, I was at Yale and just finished, and you know, grad school is only 2 years. It goes by very quickly. And I said, now what? What do I do? And they said, Dominic Argento, he writes operas, he writes songs. So they guided me to work with Dominic. And I wrote him a letter and sent him music, and he said, sure, come on, but you have to be a university student. And I'm really not an academic, but I said, okay, I'll go for it. So I was trying to do my doctorate, and trying is an important word there because there were a lot of things that I wasn't good at. But we worked, because I had just changed from pianist to composer, we worked very, very hard. And Dominic, he just knows voices so well and has such a sense of what the singer feels good with. And once I was writing a baritone piece, and I wrote it down in this low register, and he said, they're going to sound like, oh, like that. And, you know, he knew everything about all the little things that singers would sound like, and the ranges that I would try. And he said, nah, they're not going to feel comfy there. And also literature. He was really just a knowledge, had such knowledge of all kinds of text. And so, you know, we worked really hard and really fast. And mostly because I didn't stay there but a year and a half. We worked on this one cycle that I had a commission to write for Don Upshaw. And he one thing that he did say, that when we were working on that piece together, he told me about the importance of text, finding the right text. He said, take your time, be patient. You know, you really, the text will allow the cycle to work beautifully, or it could not. So I think that was one of the main things that he taught me, is how important it is to be close to it and also to find exactly what you need. But since I did leave quickly we did become very good friends afterwards. We were writing letters for about 30 years since then, you know, on and off. He would always tell me things like, oh, I'm writing this, I'm writing that, and have faith in your songs, and just keep writing. And you know, it was a very special friendship. So one I'll never forget, and I'm very thankful for.
It's beautiful. Yeah, we don't often, we aren't often reminded of that lineage of composer to composer. It stretches back decades and centuries of one composer teaches another, whether it's, you know, Mozart teaching, I believe it might be urban legend, but that he taught Beethoven briefly, a young Beethoven very briefly, whether it was piano lessons or something like that, but that there was always this thread, even though composing is a relatively solitary endeavor. Certainly the passing down of tradition and things like that is something that is quite important. I want to wrap up with a final question from Constance. Yes, and Haydn taught Mozart. Thank you, Andrew. Excellent. So, Juliana, what are you working on now, and when and how can we experience it?
Oh, right now I am working on a setting of Walt Whitman, a text, a poem called The Mystic Trumpeter. And I'm on, it's a big poem, and it's very wonderful. And it's in 8 sections, and I'm on 7. So I was thinking, oh, I'm going to be close by the time I get to talk to you guys about Anne Frank. So I'm getting there. I'm writing it for Anthony Dean Griffey, this incredible, probably the tenor that you all would know. He's just such an amazing, beautiful tenor and a beautiful person. But I found this poem especially for him because I think it reminded me of all the goodness and the warmth in Tony as a person and as a singer. So, and who knows, I hope it won't be too long. This is in the almost second stage. I'm almost ready to start in the Sibelius stage. So it's got a ways to go, but you know, in this lockdown, it's hard to know what Tony and his pianist will be up for, you know, when it will work out, but hopefully it won't be too long. I'm really enjoying writing, and Walt Whitman is a new poet for me, so it's been a nice experience so far.
Wonderful. Well, we will keep our ears and our eyes open for announcements of when Tony's premiering that, for sure. Juliana, thank you so much for speaking with us today, for sharing your music with us, for continuing to do what you do. It's been an honor to work with you and a pleasure to talk to you on these panels. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Juliana.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, and thank you for including Anne Frank in your beautiful series. It's been really fun.
And Jeff, thank you as always for joining us from across the ocean. Thank you to Chris Staub, our Director of Production and Artistic Operations, and Pooja Saha, our Development Manager, and to all of you for joining us today throughout the last several months. I was saying before we started, before we opened up the waiting room, it's been so wonderful and bizarre, and all the emotions to have our projects run as long as they've been running in this remote pandemic world. And I just want to, on behalf of all of Onsite Opera, I want to thank you all for going on this journey with us, for staying with us, for going on this crazy journey as we continue to figure out how to navigate these hectic times. So make sure you watch your email and our Facebook page and our website for announcements of other things. Our next project, which will be happening starting May 1st, is called The Road We Came. It's a series of 3 musical walking tours based on African-American music and African-American music history in 3 New York City neighborhoods, experienced through a special walking tour mobile app that you can experience the same way whether you're in New York or not. So the app can take you on a virtual tour if you're not able to go out on the streets of New York. So those experiences are on sale right now on our website. and links will be sent to you on May 1st. But if you want to, while you're thinking about it, now is the time to do it, to just go over to our website and make that purchase so you can join us for that. Thank you all again. Be well, stay safe, and we'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.